I'm Mike, and this is Film Masters. We are now at part 23 of building the Apprehension engine. We're going to be installing a noisemaker pickup, so our piezo pickup for all the noises that we're going to generate on the top soundboard, as well as we'll be installing our reverb tank. So it's going to look like this when we're finished. So let's get straight into this tutorial. So as you can see, we've got a 1/4 socket for these 3 piezo pickup. It goes straight in there. So obviously it's a 1/4 insert. You take the top off by unscrewing it and allows you to then insert it wherever you want to put it. I'm going to be installing it on the back. And as you can see, these pickups are actually sealed. They're a sealed unit. Got it off eBay. It's also got adhesive, obviously, so you can take the sticker off and stick it anywhere you want. And I'm going to install it, one of them, right in the center, right underneath the top soundboard. So that's the first one. I'm also going to put one right dead center on the far right hand side. So if I put anything on the side, as well as on the very base of the actual Apprehension engine. So that's when I'm going to be installing it. It's really simple, obviously. You take the adhesive off and you simply press down and it adheres to the job. Now, a little bit of advice, you can use some masking tape if you're wanting, or even super glue if you want to get a better stick on there and to hold it down. However, I'm going to take these off, obviously, the self-adhesive, and allow it to stick onto the Apprehension engine. And then if I don't like where the sound comes from, I can move it around later on before I find where I want to install it. However, I know that these are the best spots for it, and as you can see, I've got it right dead center on the top of the actual soundboard. Now, what I've got here, this is the back of the soundboard. We've got our 1/4 jacks from our humbucker, as well as our other piezo pickups, as well as the one I've just installed. So next, we're going to get the back part of our wood, obviously the back of the Apprehension engine, and where we've drawn the line, I'm going to work out where I want to put those 1/4 jacks into the back. So I'm just going to put a mark on the back of it. I've turned it in there and I've sort of got an idea of where I want them. So now I just need to make the associated marks to make sure that I get those measurements correct. So again, your box may be different depending on what you've used for your framing. Again, like the previous tutorial, at the end of it, I showed you how to get the line in there on the back, on the inside, so that you know where it is. And obviously when you're inserting your 1/4 jacks, it's not going to be rubbing up or obviously have your frame in the way. So I'm going to measure 3 because obviously we've got 3 1/4 jacks. So I'm going to make those measurements. And obviously as well, once I've made my measurements, I'm going to measure in a straight line. It's entirely up to you. You may decide to put your 1/4 jacks on the actual side of your Apprehension engine. I just feel that having them at the very back, very similar to the original one that Mark Korven created. However, again, it's entirely up to you. So the measurements I'm using are 3 inches from the left-hand side and 3 inches from the bottom, and then an inch apart for the spacing for where I want to put it. Now, when you're making a selection of your drill bit, make sure it's a little bit larger because you don't want your threads to actually rub against the wood when you're inserting it. So I'm just checking for clearance. I've showed you how to do this before. The drill I'm obviously using is a drill that is wider than the socket that I'm actually measuring it against. And then I'm going to use my blunt drill. Yes, I have not sharpened this drill yet, which is probably something I need to do. In fact, one of our subscribers has nicely pointed out that it probably drives him slightly crazy when I'm doing it. However, I will sharpen it, I do promise you. Once I've done that and I've drilled my 3 holes, I've just ran a sander over it. And I'll just run a sander over the back as well, just to take all the chips out. Now, because I'm using a found piece of plywood, it's a little bit thicker than the rest of the material I'm using on my Apprehension engine. I'm using a Spade drill bit to drill a hole, not all the way through, just to make it shallow so that my 1/4 socket that attaches to the piezo pickups fits in there. So if yours isn't as thick, you won't need to do that step, and obviously run a sander over it as well. Next, we're going to install our Reverb Tank. Now the Reverb Tank should fit straight in there like so without any issues, just a matter of pushing it in there. However, if your Reverb Tank doesn't fit in there because of the material that you've used, or it's a little bit too tight, you can use a chisel and a saw just to remove some of the sides like I'm showing here and this example itself. So as you can see, I've cut along the top and the bottom and removed the center part just a little bit so it fits in there. So let's have a look at the back of the Reverb Tank. So we've got this plug that comes out. It's a red, so you have a red and a white, and the red one's one that we're interested in. But however, the plug, as you can see, because of the framing, it rubs. It doesn't allow us to actually insert it properly. So there's two options to fix that. So one option is we can sand it or use a chisel to chisel that part out. But the second option is to remove a button. So let's do that one. So to remove the button, first of all, we're going to remove this little white clip that you can see here. I'm going to put a little mark at the top of it so I know which way it goes back onto it. So let's do that now, as you can see. And I'm just going to mark the top of it so we know which direction the actual wire came off from. And then there's this little screw on the other side that we unscrew to remove the plug. And then there's those two tabs. So the two tabs, you just use a screwdriver and gently push them in. There's one on each side. So as you push one in, and then put a little bit of pressure on the top to push it down, and then do the other side. And then what will happen is the plug itself should drop down. So take your time when you're doing it because there is soldered parts above it, as you can see. However, if you push it gently through the hole, what will happen is the whole plug will come out. And the good news is it's got that little plug on it as well. So it's already pre-wired, obviously. It's just about convenience. So there's the tabs I'm showing you with the pencil. On both sides is where the tab is. And I'm going to use some black electrical tape just to go around the wires. So I'll just wrap it around the wires. And the reason for that is because where we're going to install this wire, we don't want it to rub and obviously then ground the wires out because that's not good for electricity, because obviously the signal that we're after, we want it to go straight in the computer. We don't want it to obviously surge into the actual metal frame itself. But just cover it with some black electrical tape like I'm showing you. You can do a better job than what I've done, obviously, but this is the tutorial I'm quickly showing you. So there's a little gap in between where the plug originally was, and it's on the side, and you can actually feed it just in between. Now you can pull that little gap apart gently if you'd like, but what you want to do is just put the plug wire through that little gap and push it down like so. And there's a little bit of spacing there, just allow it to actually sit in, and then now it's just a matter of putting that plug back in. And because we've marked the top of it obviously with a black pen, we know which way the plug is meant to go back on. So it's got two little prongs there, obviously. You just need to adjust it and then just simply feed that little plug back on. So take your time because it is a delicate process. You don't want to bend the little metal prongs on it. Once you line up the two holes, just gently put a bit of pressure behind it and it should push straight on. So take note, obviously, before you take the plug off as well, so that you know how far it is. And as you can see here, I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure behind it once I've made an adjustment, and that will allow the plug to go all the way back on again. So when I insert it, the Reverb Tank back in, I'm just going to feed that in first. And once I've done that, I'm just going to line up my Reverb Tank and then push it in gently. Now you can see there's some holes up the very top. In the next video, I'm going to show you, just going to put some screws in the top to secure it. You can jump the gun if you want to do that. But as you can see now, the plug hangs out and allows us to plug our wire with the 1/4 jack on the end of it straight on. Now, it's probably a good idea to secure that plug to the back of the wood as well. I'm not going to do that as of yet, or you can use some masking tape. Now, the other thing you need to do is put a knot. So just tie one single knot at the back of the actual Apprehension engine on the wire. And the reason we're doing that is because when we drill a hole, we don't want the wire to pull out and then rip our plug out the back of the reverb tank, because that means that you'll probably need to solder it up again. So we're going to need a fourth hole. So we're going to obviously make a measurement. I'm making it around 1 inch apart. I'm going to use a drill that's a lot thicker than this plug here. So this is the 1/4 jack that's on the one side, whereas the other one is that it's like a sound plug that plugs into the reverb tank. You can get them from your music shops as well as on eBay. And obviously I'm just going to drill that through. And now I'm going to line up all my jacks at the back. So we've got the 3 of them there, obviously, as well as a reverb tank. So I've lined them up so I know which order they're in. I'm now going to simply put through my first cable, which is my reverb tank. And obviously you can see that knot there is going to prevent the actual cable from being pulled all the way through and putting too much pressure on it, which is something we don't want to do. And then we need to simply take the nuts off each 1/4 jack, as well as the washers, and then insert one after the other. So the very first one I'm putting in here at the moment is our humbucker railed pickup for the 3 strings. So that's the first one I'm installing, and I'm going to hand tighten that on. And then I'm going to put my next one in, obviously, which I'll be removing the nut and the washer on as well. And that is for my piezo pickups. So the one that goes underneath the bridge, as well as the middle of our soundboard, our main soundboard. So it's a good idea to write these down above or below each one of your 1/4 sockets. So again, you can put it in pencil or pen or be artistic, or you can put it on a labeler. It's entirely up to you. It's your Apprehension engine. It's all about your own flair, I guess you could say. Now, once I've done that, the last one I'm going to do is put my sound maker one in. So this one is the one for the top of the soundboard that goes up the top where all our sound makers are going to be on. And as well as I'm going to put a metal rod on there that sort of bounces around. And I'm going to show you that in an upcoming video. So I'm simply hand tightening all these on, and then obviously you can go around with a spanner or a wrench and install them or tighten them. I'm now going to put the back of my box back on the Apprehension engine. You don't need to see me do all of this. I'm sped it up, obviously. But as you can see, our back is now on our Apprehension engine. You can take a little bit of time if you want to mask and tape all the insides up. I haven't done mine. I will probably do that at a later date. However, the next thing we're going to do is actually we're going to install our volume and tune knobs. So there's 2 different ones. You've got the ones that come with it. I've bought some electric guitar ones because they look pretty cool. So I'm going to make sure that all my switches are turned anti-clockwise. Now, this is what the standard knob looks like. This is what the guitar one looks like, the electric guitar one. You can buy them on eBay. I think I paid $5 for 4 of them. But they look pretty cool, so that's why I got them. So it's just a matter of making sure that you centralize the 0 up to the very top. This one's slightly crooked. I did fix it, I promise you, so don't be too annoyed with me. So make sure that you get them all so that they're all lined up. Making sure that the switches are all anti-clockwise, so they're all set, ready to go. And these are very simple. You just push them on and you can pull them back off again as well. So obviously I did that when I fixed up my other one. And as you can see, you just turn them. And what's interesting with these knobs is actually the light hits them and actually looks like there's a light behind it when there's not. So here is our Apprehension engine. We've got our handle on. We've also got our volume and tuner switches or knobs installed. We've also got our pickups. We've got our reverb tank. I haven't put a screw in it yet, but I'll show you in the next tutorial. We've got our 3 1/4 sockets on the back of it. And we've also got our reverb tank cable that's come out the back ready to plug in. And we have now got our Apprehension engine ready to go. In the next tutorial, we're going to install our 3 strings on our short neck. We're going to install our 2 strings on the hurdy-gurdy wheel. We're going to put our little bridge on for the hurdy-gurdy wheel as well. And then we're going to play the Apprehension engine. So we're almost done. If you have any questions about building the Apprehension engine, make sure you leave a comment below in the comment section of this video. If you want to become a Filmmaster subby, it is pretty simple. You can subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Facebook and or on Twitter. And until next time, don't just film it, master it.